First of all, let's bring Damian Green into the conversation now. He's the Conservative MP for Ashford. He's chair of the One Nation Caucus of Tory MPs, former de facto Deputy Prime Minister and Policing Minister. Damian, lovely to see you this morning. Let's talk about your One Nation group. Many on the right blame you because they say that you're too soft as Tories, you're too much like Lib Dems. You're the ones that are heralding in this reform resurgence with the possibility now of Nigel Farage re-entering the political fray. Is that fair criticism?
No, every bit of that is wrong.
Why?
Because we're not Liberal Democrats, we're Conservatives.
You're soft Tories, though.
We're a Conservative tradition that goes back for as long as the Conservative Party has existed as an organisation.
Yes.
Actually believing in patriotism, the rule of law, sound finance, the sort of traditional Conservative virtues, seems to me a very good kind of conservatism.
Net zero? Is that a traditional Conservative policy?
Net zero is a policy that was passed by a Conservative government and promoted by the Conservative Prime Minister. It was Theresa May's government that passed the net zero obligation. The Prime Minister that has followed it most enthusiastically was Boris Johnson, who, last time I looked, wouldn't necessarily be regarded as a soft Conservative.
Although many on the right felt that that was the main chink in his armour.
Well, people can disagree with net zero if they like, but it is conserving the planet is a basic duty of people who believe in conserving our own country, the best of our traditions, that actually conservation in the widest sense is a lot of what conservatism is about. But
at the same time, you've incurred the wrath of the grassroots. You had this situation where you were deselected. What was that all about, if it wasn't about some of these issues?
That was about people who objected to the system of having an MP having an automatic right to... my constituency was cut in half, and I've been selected for the other half of it.
Yes.
So it was reported at the time as some great political coup, but it wasn't. Yeah.
Some might wonder, having served for 26 years, why you're wanting to run again if the Tories are facing what many pollsters predict as a sort of electoral oblivion.
Well, because I don't think we are. I think there's a chance. We've now seen the economy begin to turn. We've seen success on inflation.
Yes.
And in the end, that old Bill Clinton era cliche of it's the economy, stupid, is by and large true. And I think we will have, over the course of this year, a good economic story to tell. I think not just on inflation. I think it's very likely, all the signals are, that we will see significant tax cuts.
Would you like to see that? What would you like to see cut? There's been talk about cutting inheritance tax. There's been talk about raising the threshold, 52,000, to something higher. Dominic Cummings, in his meetings with Rishi Sunak, has suggested it be raised to £100,000. What's your reaction to that idea?
Well, I want the Chancellor to do as much as he can responsibly afford to do. You know, we've seen what happened when you try and do tax cuts that people think can't be afforded. So as much as possible and aimed at as many people as possible. So I think that it's got to be seen to be fair. It's got to be putting their own money back in the hands of as many hard-working people as possible. So,
I mean, is it fair to tax people on inheritance?
Well, in an ideal world, you wouldn't.
So would you scrap IHT?
But it's all, well, I don't know what the Chancellor's figures will look like.
I mean, just a personal opinion.
But I would make the point that I think the Chancellor should concentrate possibly on income tax measures first.
OK, so is it fair?
More people. But also, the other point I would make is that's got lost in this discussion is that I think an essential part of both a healthy society and actually a society that is, if you like, more conservative, is home ownership. And I would very much like to see the Chancellor do something in the budget to promote people onto the housing ladder for the first time, to help young people become homeowners, because I think helping young people is really important for the party. We've lost a lot of support from young people, and also home ownership is a long-run virtue in this country, and I want to see Conservative governments promote that.
But when it comes to fair policies, is it fair that somebody on £52,000 a year pays 40% tax?
Well, I think, I would like to see everyone at every level paying less tax. To do that, you need to take tough decisions about public spending, and you can't just go for tax cuts without saying, we've got to get the public finances in shape first. And I very much agreed with what Liam Fox has just been saying to you about that.
You're saying you're hopeful about the next general election, whenever that may be, probably the second half of this year, if the Prime Minister is to be believed. But at the same time, it's your caucus that is a thorn in his side when it comes to this Rwanda plan. Because on one hand, you're saying that you won't vote for it if it's amended. And on the other hand, you've got the, I don't know, they're calling them the sort of 5 families of other Tory caucuses saying they won't vote for it unless it's amended. So once again, even though Rishi Sunak is facing the toughest electoral test of his life, we've got your Tories arguing with other Tories in the party.
Yeah, but the fact you've missed out of that is that if my Tories, if you want to describe that, One Nation Caucus voted with the Prime Minister, supported the Prime Minister, and my friends and colleagues. So
you'll support him again if the legislation's amended?
We have said no. We've said that we want what the government has proposed. We have reservations about it, of course, and individuals will have different reservations. But nevertheless, partly because we can accept it, it doesn't break the law, it doesn't break our international obligations, but also because we are team players, we have got behind the Prime Minister.
But you won't be team players if Mark Francois has his way.
Wrong.
So if Bill Cash and Mark Francois have their way and amend the legislation, you won't vote for it. So you're only team players if your team agrees with the legislation.
Well, I would ask Bill Cash and Mark Francois to stop trying to amend the legislation, to get behind the Prime Minister.
Well, they're saying it's not going to be effective at being a deterrent to deport people to Rwanda. We've still not deported anyone to Rwanda.
Well, of course we haven't, and that's why the government is putting forward this bill. But I am quite happy to support the Prime Minister's bill.
Do you want to see anyone deported to Rwanda?
Do I want to see anyone?
Yeah.
Well, I want the boats to stop. I mean,
but do you want to see anyone deported to Rwanda?
If it works, the government says it's going to act as a deterrent. I'm happy to accept
do you think it will work
on that? I think it will act as a deterrent, yeah.
But do you think it will actually work? Do you think we're going to see people deported to Rwanda?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And you're OK with that?
Yeah, as long as we meet our international obligations. I mean, that's what's really important, this stuff about taking away the idea that you can take away any individual's right to appeal on any court case. That's quite dangerous. If you sent someone back who would be in danger there, then that's not the right thing.
But don't you think that illegal immigrants are just giving the government the complete runaround? And aren't you as frustrated as anybody on the right or wherever else at some of these people who are clinging on to their human rights, even though some of them have committed crimes in this country, can't be deported?
Yeah. Oh,
it's a scandal, isn't it?
It's a failure of the law as it currently stands.
Yes.
And so it is up to Parliament if it wants to change the law. But I think we need to change the law when we do, as we do all the time, it's what Parliament does, in a responsible way that meets our international obligations and accepts that, for Britain to join Russia and Belarus being outside the ECHR, for example, the European Convention on Human Rights, would be a strange position for Britain to be in, as well as the effects on things like the Good Friday Agreement.
I want to ask you a couple of questions about policing. So very briefly, your reaction to Chris Skidmore announcing his resignation and standing down?
I'm pretty appalled by that.
Are you?
I'm disappointed that Chris has done that. His seat's abolished. He was standing down anyway. This is a wholly unnecessary by-election. I think he's being...
Has he betrayed the Prime Minister?
Yeah, I think the Prime Minister will be entirely justified to feel very, very cross about this, and all his constituency workers who presumably supported him for years.
Can I talk to you in your capacity as a former policing minister about a couple of things? First of all, the police now investigating the Post Office. What's your view of Paula Vernell? Should she have her CBE taken away?
Well, the committee that looks at that has asked the government...
But personal opinion,
not
Damian.
to do it. Personal opinion, I personally think that it would do her credit if she voluntarily handed it back.
I mean, 600,000 have now signed a petition. I appreciate that people are now more familiar with this scandal because of the ITV documentary, but nobody's taken any responsibility for this at all. Should Ed Davey take some responsibility?
I think Ed Davey has got a lot of questions to answer, as ex-ministers will. I was thinking, well, what would I have done? And I like to think that if I'd been told hundreds of sub-postmasters have suddenly become criminals, I would have asked questions about that, because all my experience of sub-postmasters is that they are the definition of pillars of the community. And so the idea that hundreds of them suddenly were indulging in fraud and criminality was always an extraordinary accusation.
Yeah, but yet Ed Davey replies to Mr Bates and says, no, we shouldn't have a meeting, this isn't of interest.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think Ed Davey has got very serious questions to answer on this. I think he's in big trouble. trouble.
Let's talk about a very, very tragic story, the death of Harry Pittman. We have to be careful because proceedings are active. But in general, I mean, as a mother, I've got a 13-year-old son. He sometimes likes to go to Camden with his mates near where this incident happened on New Year's Eve. I think parents are frightened for their children at the moment. Knife crime has increased by 40% in the capital. What's the solution to this problem, Damian? Is it more stop and search?
I think there are two solutions. There's a government solution and a police operational solution, which is obviously that's an independent decision for chief constables and in this case the Commissioner of the Met. The government's contribution has to be to make sure that you have enough police officers, and that's a commitment that we've met. In 2019 we said we would have 20,000 extra police officers, and I know in my part of the world, in Kent, there are more police out there than we've ever had. Now, that's good. That's what
it's not the perception of your constituents, though, is it?
No, it isn't. And because it is true, people haven't yet noticed, and that brings me on to the other point, which is operational. Those police need to be deployed doing the things that my constituents and the general public more widely want to see happen, and that will absolutely be in London. Tackling knife crime all around the country, making sure that every burglary, every housebreaking is properly investigated as soon as possible. People want the police to be doing that rather than some of the other things that they're criticised for doing. And that, as I say, it is not for politicians to tell any individual police officer, go and investigate that crime rather than this crime. But that is the job of chief constables. So I hope that around the country, chief constables will take the message that they need to be policing the streets. They've now got the resources to do it. They should be policing the streets in the way that the general public want to see them policed.
When I interview politicians, I always like to ask one question with just a yes or no answer if you're capable.
And how often do they ever do that?
Very, very rarely, I've got to be honest. Do you think that the Prime Minister was right to have met with Dominic Cummings as Prime Minister twice last year? Yes or no?
I wouldn't have done so.
So that's a no. Thank you very much, Damian Green, for joining me this morning. Lovely to speak to you.